there with you? Who was there long distance helping you?
You.
That's right. Because it was wrong what was done to you. And I'm proud that I was able to step up. Going to the first issue, Nat Glover's already got a program that's moving towards that. We met about 3 weeks ago. I'm totally on board. Obviously, there are certain, no. Pedophile, no. I'm not for that. A rapist, no. But someone that has other felonies, otherwise, my goodness, it's just a vicious cycle that's going around and around and around. They can never get ahead, and we're going, well, my goodness, do something. Body cams, I'm okay with the body cams. Let's look at the cost. Let's look at the rights issues that are involved.
Thank you. As far as the convicted felons, I have to agree with my colleague. Your more forcible felonies, I don't think that I would go along with that. But if a person has committed a felony, done their time, been released, and is introduced back into society, I think they should have the right to vote. As far as body cameras are concerned, I would want to evaluate and review that a little further simply because of the legalities that's involved with that. You really have to be concerned with all the angles. If it's going to get all the angles, if it's going to do everything that you think it should do. So as your sheriff, I would hold several town hall meetings and let's talk about it. Let's get everything out on the table. And if you're okay with being on the 6 o'clock meeting and not gown on, we hope maybe we can approve it.
I'm in agreement. I think all the a person been convicted for a convicted felon should be subject to review, to be brought back and be a productive part of the community, be a full partner in the community. And that should we all agree with that. As far as body cameras, I fully support body cameras. And I tell you, you talk about building community trust. Well, it starts there. And there's a couple reasons. You have community trust. We can validate a complaint whether it's true or not. Safety issues and training issues for officers. A lot of times when an officer gets in a stressful situation, they don't really recall exactly what happened until they see it played back and say, man, I didn't remember doing that. It can be used as a training situation in the cabin for officers. And a complaint, you can either verify a complaint or unfounded complaint. So I'm very much in favor of it. You start with the high complaint areas and you build your way through the violent crime areas and to get them all service. Thank you.
Now we're moving on to the next segment, and the next segment is the candidate questions, and Dr. Cohen is going to explain how this is going to work. Turn on the mic.
Can you hear me? No.
So the way the candidate portion of the evening will go is each candidate will have an opportunity to ask another candidate a question. And that candidate who has asked the question will get an opportunity to respond, and he'll get 30 seconds as well. For example, Dr. Cummings will get a chance to ask Mr. Holdenfield a question. He'll have 30 seconds to respond, and Dr. Cummings will get a chance to respond to his answer for 30 seconds as well. Every candidate understands? Yeah. And we will start with Dr. Cummings, and you can ask any of the other 4 candidates a question. They'll have 30 seconds to answer. You will have, again, 30 seconds to respond to their answer.
I want to ask a question collectively.
You get to ask one candidate.
It's just one. It's one. Yeah. This question is to all the candidates. Whoever want to respond.
No, you can't.
One question.
The rule is directed
Follow me
to
with
one
this, folks.
candidate.
Please follow me with this, okay? Okay. This is is what they call an indirect question. It's not meant to be answered, folks, because there's only one correct answer, and that's me.
So we made
So
it up.
here's the
We
question.
made it up.
Here's the question.
No one responds.
Okay, here's the
We have
question.
to follow the rules.
Mr. Holyfield, Mr. Holyfield. The public needs a seat at the table. The Civilian Review and Accountability Boards provide the public that seat at the table. Are you for it or are you against it? If you're against it, why?
Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you. Unless we have specific guidelines and rules for a citizens review board, I'm opposed to just throwing something out there saying that we're going to have citizen review boards. You got to have consistency. You've got to make sure that folks reviewing what police actions are understand what those actions. Quite frankly, in most big cities, the citizens are more lenient than the administrators are.
And I'll follow up by saying, as you listen to the responses tonight, remember this man was in the hierarchy for 10 years. He had plenty of time to think about whether or not he supports the Civilian Review Boards or your seat at the table. I want to make sure all of you are fully aware of that.
Mr. Holyfield, your question.
Mike? You're a good man and a good policeman. You've been right up through SWAT. The sheriff put you over in patrol, right there at the very end. What did the crime numbers do?
Let me tell you, as we stand here before you today, we have a 43-year low in crime in Jacksonville today. Now, we have a violence problem that I've talked about from the beginning. So we have crime numbers in Jacksonville that we can work with. Let me tell you this. When I started my career in 1991, I became a police officer to help people who couldn't help themselves. They couldn't protect themselves. And I worked 23 years fighting crime in this community, and I'm proud of that service to this community. Thank you.
I don't need to rebut.
My question is to Mr. McDonald. With Mr. McDonald, all of your experience with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in many years, and then, of course, your experience in Afghanistan, what would you say, while with the Sheriff's Office, the many years that you were there, was your greatest accomplishment?
Thank you, Ken. Hey, I'll tell you my greatest accomplishment. It's not any one case, it's not any one thing I did, and working with people. It's meeting people like you and getting the honor of working with these men here. I love every one of them, and if they would do anything for this city, that's my greatest accomplishment, is being able to work with this city. Thank you. Ken, I'll ask you the same question.
Can I rebut first? The rebuttal would be, your career was somewhat polished, earned, but polished, going up through the ranks, being with the boys, maybe even in the cigar club, I don't know about that part. But my point with that is this: to be a good sheriff, you got to be a good servant. And I think your career just kind of went up more so in the management mode than anything else.
He gets to ask the question. He said, I've asked you, sir.
All right, so I'm up. There you go. Okay, Jimmy. Dr. again. Hey, listen, do you believe that with your background as a union leader and extensive relationship with the union, do you believe that when it comes time to make tough decisions that are right for this community, that may not be popular with the union, will you be able to make those decisions?
Mike, that sounded like John Rutherford would ask me that himself. Understand where I'm coming from. I'm very proud. I represented the men and women in uniform, including you and your father, with paid raises and benefits while I was the union president. But I also am very proud that John Rutherford had me as his chief negotiator for the last 6 years on the management side.
So a quick rebuttal, let me say this. We have talked a lot about building trust in this community. And one of the things that we have done at JSO through a lawsuit from our union against our agency is close our response to resistance process to this community. And as I mentioned before, we have a police union. You have 9 months before you hear from our agency, and that's a direct result of action from our union. And I would push back on that and say that's a decision that's bad for this community.
Yeah.
But let me say, it wasn't when I was in those people.
So we're gonna do this round one more time since we have some time again. So we're gonna start now with Mr. Holderfield. You get to ask a candidate. You can ask the same candidate or you can ask a different candidate a question. They'll have a 30-second response to that.
Does the candidate have to be here?
That would be smart.
That's good. Mike, what's your position on the red light cameras?
Good question. I think, anytime we can use technology to leverage technology as a force multiplier in our community, we should do that. However, I think we've gone too far with the red light cameras. I think we have too many red light cameras in Jacksonville. We have probably 10 intersections in Jacksonville that we could use a red light camera. And the basis of that technology really allows us to take the next step to a halo system that will really stop all the lights when somebody's running and keep people from getting hit in the intersection. So technology is a good thing. Red light camera program for us right now is going a little bit too far.
Well, good response, since I'm the one that 3 months ago told you I'd already met with the traffic engineer about the halo. The problem is right now is who's making money off of those red light cameras is the private company that they brought in here to charge those fines. It isn't the sheriff and it isn't the city, and I vow to you we're going to get rid of them.
Mr. Jefferson.
If elected sheriff, how do you plan to prevent Ferguson from happening here in Jacksonville?
You can't ask a different candidate.
That's a good question. Good question. Actually, it starts with there's a couple valuable things. There's training and equipping. If those officers were properly trained and equipped, they could handle the situation better. They did not have tasers. In either situation could have reduced that. They also didn't have the proper training for the arrest. Also, you have to engage the community and things like this and find out what's going on and train the officers in engaging different communities. So there's a whole gamut of things you would do, but that's something you should do.
Jefferson, 30-second
I think we also need to employ transparency, proactiveness, and also community balance. That's a small community. with a lot of black people there and a lot of white officers. And all of that triggered all of a sudden at once. So we need to add that entire balance. That's what I'm
This is the first time we ever had to do this, throwing the curveball here. Hey, Ken, what's the most significant thing you did in your career with the sheriff's office that reduced crime in the city?
That's a good question. By working with at-risk youth. When I was in charge of the Drug Education for Youth program, we deterred that at-risk behavior by teaching them values, by teaching them how to respect authority, how to resolve conflict without resolution. And as they grew up, out of 482 children, we only lost 2.
That's a good answer because, contrary to what you might have said, I wasn't out smoking cigars at the cigar club. I was doing some things too, working with the youth Weed and Seed program, as I know we interacted in that program, working with our youth, so I believe in that. Also did some other things in investigations throughout my career, but you had a great career.
Hey, my question is for Tony. Tony, talk about your experience in dealing with budgets and specifically a $400 million budget.
Let me be absolutely clear on this, okay? I was a supervisor in the U.S. Army. Top secret clearance, especially with control budget. I'm the only candidate in this race in the state of Florida with a doctoral degree in organizational leadership. That matters, folks. Now, specifically about that $400 million budget, let's not, don't be confused. 85% of that budget has already been allocated to manpower. 85% of it. So that's 15% for the sheriff to actually try to figure out how to, create cost savings. Not very much there. What you do with that 85%, like I alluded to earlier, it really matters. And I have a robust plan to utilize that 85% of manpower to work for you.
Dr. Cummings, it's your turn to ask a question.
My turn to ask a question. Great. Okay. All right. I have so many questions on my mind, but this is about you, the public. This question is for Jimmy Oldfield. You alluded to earlier that you think that the police department should mirror the community as served. You were in charge of the Human Resources Division, which actually is in charge of recruiting from the community. Okay? Actually seeking out qualified candidates for hiring. Is that ever? Okay. Well, having said that, during that time in that post, did you at any time, let me rephrase that, what initiatives did you take, or what steps did you take to seek out minority recruits?
Let me, first of all, since he's a patrol officer and doesn't quite understand what the chief of HR does. The chief of HR is in charge of all civilian hiring and all the appointees. So yes, we went out of our way for nurses, civilian staff. All other uniformed services is direct hired at the police academy and not through the HR division.
Let me be absolutely clear on this, folks. If you are worth your weight in salt as an HR manager, okay, whether you recruiting civilians or officers, the outreach should be the same, or you should be able to convince your boss that, hey, minority hiring is necessary. Okay, let's not fall for this. He's been there in the leadership for 10 years, telling you what he's going to do in 4 that he couldn't get accomplished in the last 10.
We questions from the audience, and they've been tweeted in, they've been handed in, and so we will ask the questions based upon those that were submitted to us via technology and those that were submitted by the audience.
We'll come back now.
The microphone's not working.
Wait a second. If you need to use the bathroom, you may use the bathroom. We're not taking a bathroom break. That's fine. All right, real quickly. Actually, I like that format. We might use that again in the future. But one of the questions that came in on Twitter, this will go to you, Dr. Cummings.
Sure.
Do you agree with Angela Corey's policies towards juveniles?
No. Absolutely. Absolutely not. Okay? We must make, the public must insist that we reach out to our juveniles. Because we already have an overcrowding at the jail problem, which is costing you more tax dollars. And number two, if you're only issuing 33% civil citations to juveniles, and major metropolitan cities in the state of Florida are issuing about 72%, what does that say about your policy? As your sheriff, I will commit to raising that bar to 70 to 75% issuance. That will happen under my reign.
I advocate expanding the civil citation program, and I would also challenge you to ask any of the candidates who have been to the review boards over in Reebok, where the citations are, the current citation system are reviewed. We need to expand that program, and I disagree with the state attorney's hard-nosed position at this particular point.
I agree partially with Angel's position. However, I think the restorative justice programs, that Jimmy mentioned, the neighborhood accountability boards, the expansion of the juvenile citations, all those are hugely important. Here's where we agree. When we have a victim involved in this crime, not two boys fighting, but we have a legitimate victim involved in the crime, that victim needs to be part of the decision on whether or not juvenile citation is issued. We can't ignore the rights of that victim. If the victim is for it, or the victim's family is okay with it, I'm okay with it. But I think that's got to be part of the equation as well.
For those that just returned, the question is, do you agree with all of Angela Corey's policies against juveniles?
No, I do not. The main one being the civil citation, I guess I would have to agree. When we were coming up, if you had a little skirmish at school or somewhere and pushed each other around a little bit, there were no scars, marks, or bruises. It was done over. We went and played together somewhere else. Nowadays, you get arrested for that. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right for a child who has not committed a violent crime where there's scars, marks, bruises, or anything that's going to follow them the rest of their lives, to have an arrest record, even though if they're under the age of 18 and arrested for simple battery, that goes away, but the scar still remains there. So I don't agree with all of her decisions. I do look forward as a sheriff to trying to work with her in a professional manner so that we can have a
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page with this. Everybody wants to expand the use of civil citation, and I think sit down with Ms. Corey, hopefully, and I'll be able to expand that. A couple of reasons. Cost fiscally it's responsible. It costs about $500 to issue a citation. We're costing about $5,000 to get a kid through the system. More importantly, it's you're helping save the child. If you can keep them out of jail and get them on the right path, well, that's what it's all about. The recidivism rate is very low, so I think it's only makes sense for us to sit down and increase the civil citation. That's the biggest issue right now.
Thank you. We have two more questions. And this one's gonna start with you, Mr. Williams. Somebody said as a school psychologist, they are concerned with the frequency that young elementary students are being withheld from school. How will you influence policies to effectively integrate mental health and education services with law enforcement?
You see that in the school system, and I am committed to working with the school system. They have their own police department in there, the Duval County Public Schools, and working with them to help them identify these issues and bringing the programs to light that need to come to light for the school programs. The mental health issue in our community impacts many other issues beyond just schools. I mean, our homelessness issue in Jacksonville, a lot of it is driven by mental health. So working with the mental health community in lots of different areas is something that the sheriff absolutely has to do. He has to be at the table, be a part of those boards, be a part of those discussions. And again, diversion from mental health is the way to go. Putting people in the criminal justice system who have mental illness doesn't help them. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help you, the taxpayer. And so we've got to work with that community and make sure that we work where we can. We've got to have a continuity of care for people who must be arrested for whatever crime they may have committed. If they're in jail, that continuity of care is incredibly important. So we've got to, again, work with the mental health community and make sure that we champion those issues.
I truly believe that crisis intervention training is important for our officers to undergo. But here's the problem with that issue. As I see, law enforcement is the wrong entity to be out front on this issue, because we don't always get it right when it comes to mental health. There are mental health professionals in the community that need would like to have a platform by which to launch safely those services that the mental health patients may need. But law enforcement tend to overreact. We can train them, so they can better identify the behaviors of someone that's mentally ill. But we don't want them out front. That's why we have too many, don't shoot, or mentally ill, because we're not really equipped to be out front. We should be there, but we should make a platform for those mental health professionals to safely engage those folks.
Mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, crime. It goes in that order. As the former director of the Department of Corrections, I saw way too many people that came into the jail or the criminal justice system that were mentally ill. Your jail should not be the largest mental health facility in Northeast Florida. Don't you agree? You spend $70 a day on average housing or incarcerating someone in the jail. Shouldn't we better put that money to work dealing with our mental health clinicians to come up with centers as alternatives to incarceration? I mean, it's real simple, and I saw it every day when patrol officers would arrest someone that did not need to be incarcerated, and there should have been an alternative.
Mental health is a very serious issue, very important issue. When you look at crimes committed all over the world, particularly mass shooting, executions and things like that, it primarily involves a person who is mentally ill of some sort. The sheriff needs to have a seat at that table so that he can learn and he can train his officers as to how to readily identify issues of mental health. It starts really way before it gets to a police level. It should anyway, particularly in our schools, our colleges, our institutions, and the workforce. But the sheriff needs to have a table there. He needs to be ready to prepare his officers. His officers need to be ready to prepare to be able to identify incarceration or intervention. That way they can make the proper decision, because everybody that's mentally ill does not need to be arrested, and putting them in jail is not the answer.
Yeah, I believe that law enforcement has to partner with the entire mental health community on dealing with the issues and addressing at the earliest time. There's a wide range of mental health. You think of the most extreme end of mental health, and that's when it kind of comes to everybody's attention. But there's actually the early indicators that we as officers need to be trained for and prepared for, and we also have to work work with the mental health community. I was just at a seminar with the mental health community at WJCT about 2 weeks ago. It was very good to hear this, but they're fighting tremendous budget cuts in addressing the mental health issues. And what's so sad about it is, an investment in these mental health issues up front saves a ton of money on the back end. And we just need to, as a community, petition our legislators and our leaders and our bodies to get this money here. They're talking about how they can maximize federal dollars to help us here. But
Thank you, thank you. This is going to be our very last question before closing statements.
Good evening, candidate. I have a question for you on behalf of families of victims of violent crimes. In 2007, I suffered the loss of my husband on Christmas Eve, and during that process, the entire police force or individuals that are involved treated us like common criminals. So my question to you is, once you take office, what will you do to help increase the cultural competency and sensitivity of your detectives and police officers? Thank you.